Most buyers never tell you where you lost them. They sit through your demo, read your proposal, take your follow-up call, and then they go quiet. And somewhere in your sales process, that deal gets marked as lost to a competitor or no decision. But the truth is usually simpler, and it's harder to hear. The process broke down somewhere, and nobody on your team saw it coming. Because your buyers have a seat at every meeting you will never be invited to. The outside seat sits in that seat. I'm Mike Tumulty, founder of Inside Now, where we go through your commercial funnel as a real buyer and tell you exactly what we find. I'm also the host of the Outside Seat podcast, where I bring that conversation to the people who can actually do something about it. Every week, 2 strands. The GTM leaders talking strategy, and then the unsung heroes talking reality. Brought to you by Flourish, the GTM talent partner that connects hiring, development, and performance in sales, in life. Now to today's show. Welcome to this week's episode of The Outside Seat. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by William Taylor. William has been running RevOps organizations for many, many years. Rather than me give an intro onto who William is, William, why don't you just tell everybody about yourself?
Good morning. So my name's William. I have been in the RevOps space for nearly 15 years before it was even a space. So I'm a bit of a unicorn because I come from the financial space into sales, into RevOps, as opposed to normally the other way around. And my primary joy in life is helping companies scale. That's what I do. It's what I enjoy. It's part of being a RevOps person is enjoying the challenge. I think that's a nice way to put it. You have to enjoy the challenge.
Excellent. So you talked there about coming at it from a different angle. So RevOps means something genuinely different in every organization. What is your definition, and why does the distinction between what RevOps is and what people think it is actually matter for the buyer?
So I would say the way people normally view RevOps is as some form of systems guy. So we're systems people, we're focused on tech, we're focused on data and numbers. And that's partially true. I like to think of RevOps as something much more from a business's perspective as knitting all the pieces of go-to-market together. So it's not specifically on one thing. So yes, we do tech. Yes, we do processes. We do data. We do analytics. But we also help with the team structures, the roles, the journeys, enablement. So we actually help with so much more than just the market perception of it. So my definition primarily is RevOps is a purpose about increasing scalability, making your business, your outcomes predictable, and to build efficiencies. So it's not just about the output of the team, it's about the outcome of all the teams. So everybody working together as a machine as opposed to individual cogs that do their own thing and stop, because that's how they view life.
I mean, have you got an example of maybe a tough situation where those components were not connected or speaking to each other, that you then, from a RevOps perspective, had to not lay down the law as such, because we've all got our place within the machine, but guide the business into connecting all of these different components together?
There's a very common one that comes across in most companies. I'd say it's channel conflict, especially. So when you're talking about pipeline generation, you're talking about qualified pipeline. There's always a little bit of conflict, especially between marketing, who view output. Their output are leads, MQLs, SALs, SQLs. Whereas sales have a different perspective. They're focused on good quality pipeline, good quality outcomes. And that's usually one of the breaking points. So the way I would recommend for companies to look at that is to go, okay, I'm going to give you €1 million, pounds, dollars, whatever the currency is. What is the most efficient way to spend that money? that's how you bring the team together, because then you're looking at from point A to point Z. This is the most tangible, straight line, efficient way to generate revenue. And marketing, sales, partner networks, etc., it's always the same. There's always a conflict about the nuances of output, which is why outcome is always more important as a lever than the output itself.
And how do you guide those different decision makers on what are the things at your disposal that you can help the CMO or the CRO or the VP of sales to make those decisions?
This is the way I would describe it is the superpower of RevOps, objectivity. We're not tied into a particular metric. We're tied into all the metrics. So the best way to do that is to objectively challenge it. Challenge it respectfully, challenge it kindly, but look at the numbers and challenge it and say, okay, but if you're generating X amount of leads and you're hitting your targets and you're doing this and this, how does that convert to the next level? And then you start to bridge the gaps between people. And that's also one of the main purposes of RevOps. It's to bridge the gap between teams. So one of my current colleagues refers to me as Mr. Switzerland because I'm neutral. I'm in the middle. I don't have a side of the war type of thing. I'm in the middle and I'm just looking for how do we bring this together? Because everybody is in the same boat and you need everybody to be rowing the boat in the same direction. And that's the way I always think of it. So look at the data, look at the analysis, and challenge it objectively. Look at the structures, look at the handover processes, look at SLAs, look at the tech stack. I mean, that's usually one of the key things is the tech stacks aren't synced or they don't work correctly. So you have to kind of nudge that back a little bit and say, what you're providing, is that what the next person in the relay team is expecting? And that's always a bit of a challenge to get that way.
Yeah.
And as a motivational factor, not that it's always in the realm of RevOps, but compensate people on outcome, give them compensation for their output, something they control, but tie it together and tie the teams together more strongly that if one team succeeds, all the teams succeed. And it's a very good way. And RevOps spend a lot more time now on compensation plans and or commission plans, etc. And to bring them together to actually motivate people and reward them for that.
I love the analogy of the superpower being objectivity. And usually when I'm in an interview and I'm talking to people about what is their superpower, not a lot of people come out with objectivity, which is interesting that you did in this context, and it makes complete sense. But on the superpower, what is the kryptonite, if you like? What is the challenge? What is you're playing the role of Switzerland, and you're trying to stay neutral, but at some point, I'm sure that political dynamics within a scaling organization where egos are in place and you're trying to be as objective as possible, where does the kryptonite come in? What's the real challenge within that scenario that you just painted?
The real challenge is normally the same phrase that you'll hear over and over again. But we've always done it this way. We've always done it this way. And normally in the types of companies I join, they're normally in that kind of hyperscale, hyperspeed space, or they're going through the next evolution of maturing as a business cycle. So lots of these companies have people who have been there for 10 years or 8 years or 7 years, and they've never really did it in a different company. They don't really have the vast experience to step back. So sometimes you can get stuck in that cultural shift of a company where people have been there. So that can be the kryptonite. And for me, the best way to address it is to approach it logically, to as I said, challenge it objectively with the person. Face to face is always better. I'm not a big fan of sending big long emails or Slack messages. It's let's jump on a call, let's talk about it. And I am not here to give the answer. I'm here to give suggestions on how to make things better. I'm here at the end of the day, this person is accountable and responsible for this stuff. And it's about helping them understand there's a better way and letting them make that decision to do it better, as opposed to really hard hammer forcing people to do stuff, because that never works. Because then they're not bought into it. You kind of have to give that little bud of inspiration slightly to say, just there's a better way here. What do you think about this? Or what do you think about this? And then you let it grow and develop. You will never win a fight with somebody by forcing them to change. You have to give them a reason and a really strong motivation to change. And in these types of businesses, the stick very, very rarely works, unfortunately. It's not that type of motion.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of, like you said that you specialize in hyperscale environments. So when a revenue operation is scaling fast, from your perspective, and maybe it's a double-barreled question, this, but what's the first thing that breaks? And with that, what is the thing that breaks that most CROs or leaders of revenue, they don't realize it's already broken until it's just a little bit too late?
Ooh. I think normally when a company's scaling, there are a couple of different things that break. So the first one is the end to end has never really been cohesive. It's never really been end to end. It's always been very isolated, and because of that, so if the pipeline doesn't grow, then there's not enough qualified pipeline, therefore there's not a lot of close won deals, and your win rates drop and everything else drops. So it's normally because there's a short-term focus. There's short-term ideas on what should happen and what shouldn't happen. So it doesn't matter if it's pipeline, conversion rates, etc. The short-term gain is usually positioned over the long-term component. So it's not let's focus on the medium to long term. It's let's focus on the short term. Let's focus on what we need to do now. And that becomes counterintuitive at a certain tipping point. And the biggest thing that people normally give up on, and I can only speak from my experience, is outbound pipeline. So if you've never really had outbound and you're investing in it, companies expect it to hit the ground immediately. So why is the outbound not producing? Why is it not going? Why does it not work? And they give up on it too fast. If you objectively position it, which was, but how long did it take you to get your marketing machine to work? How long did it take you to get your channel machine to work? It wasn't done in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. It took time. It took focus. It took adjustment. It took re-engineering and building an outbound motion. Companies give up on way too quickly, then fall back to the kind of default of, yeah, marketing can just do more, as though magically marketing have capacity to just magically bring more leads and etc. So yeah,
Yeah, and
that's usually my experience.
why do you think that is? Is there a symptom? Is it just a it's not producing at the rate that we thought it was when we business planned this out. Therefore, let's just give up and we'll do more of the thing over there that's actually producing. Is that what drives that, or is there something a little bit more emotional about it?
I think it's both. So there will always be the bias of we already have these mechanisms in place that work. So therefore, why is this one not working as quickly? And I think the second part is per perception. So depending on your business, depending on your average deal size, the number of new customers, new logos, etc. Building pipeline fresh is a medium to long term thing. It's never a short term gain. I do not know a CRO who thinks building outbound pipeline is a short term fix. It's a long term business motion that actually benefits the company. You just have to stay strong to it and understand the vision. And I think the big part is the misconception of the other parts of the business, because they see marketing brings in X amount, your partnerships bring in X amount. Outbound, well, we've had an outbound team now for 3 months and they brought in X%. Well, that's normal. That's natural. It's a longer term play and you have to just be patient to it.
Yeah, excellent. I think you're spot on, by the way. In terms of what you said right at the start as part of your introduction, it seems like you've got a unique perspective from a RevOps perspective because you've got the finance background. If I look at and dig into that a little bit more, what makes you unique then from a RevOps perspective because you've got that finance background? What do you do differently than somebody that's come through maybe the sales ops or the sales leader route to RevOps? What makes you unique that other people can learn from because of your background?
I would say the unique part is business language. So the unique part for me is I can really speak to pretty much every department in a company. So whether it's marketing, if we're talking about ROI, if we're talking about different lead channels, different campaign metrics, etc., sales, BDRs, SDRs, account management, key account management, most people in sales ops, rev ops can have those types of conversations. It's how you have the next part of it. So to really work with the finance team for budgeting, for planning, but also for how do we help the end to end? Because revenue is not specifically when an order form is signed. That's a bit of paper. That's a promise of something. Whereas from the financial side, I can see all the way through to the end, which is recurring revenue, lifetime value, et cetera, where I look at the whole picture and I can work with these other teams as well. Because it's important that you're able to translate the message when things are great and everybody's killing it and it's fantastic. The conversations are nice and easy and high fiving, whoop, we're doing amazing. It's when things are a bit tough, can you stand there and translate the problems in a way that other people can really understand it who are not from that space? It's a very tough thing to learn how to talk to people from different teams, but I speak to every team in the business normally. So whether it's product, whether it's product marketing, all the marketing, lead generation, demand generation, events, the finance team, how do we build a system that as many interactions as we have with a customer are positive? Because the way the finance team interacts with a customer can actually be detrimental to keeping that customer. If there's always mistakes on invoicing or billing or other components because the sales team haven't done their part properly. And therefore you make mistakes and you damage your brand, you damage the relationship you have. Same with customer support, customer success. How do you manage all of those things? As I said, A to Z. I'm focused on revenue. I'm not focused on close one deals. I'm focused on the wider spectrum.
Interesting. It sounds like relationships is a really strong component, and because you're able to talk the language in those different ways and perspectives, it helps you greatly. But if you look at the relationship then between the CRO and the RevOps leader, it is one of the most important within that whole structure. Sometimes it can be dysfunctional, um, but what does it look like, therefore, when it works? And what does it look like when it's not quite there? I mean, you've been doing this a long time. I'm sure there's people you've worked with where it's worked really well, and there's instances where maybe it's not worked so well. It'd be good to understand what are the components that help it to work and counter to that as well.
Yeah, I'm very lucky, to be honest. I'm very lucky that normally with the senior leadership, I have a pretty good relationship. So I can certainly say that the key driver for a good relationship is trust. So does that person, are they able to come to me with this is the situation and I can go and go at it without really needing too much guidance or focus points on it? And that obviously takes time, but it comes from some of the key drivers, and I mentioned it before, which is accountability. I mean, anybody who's reporting to a senior exec, regardless of whether it's COO, CFO, you need accountability. And if somebody trusts you that I'm giving you this and you'll do the best you can do to handle it, then that's great. But if they trust you to do the best you can do, but also deal with it and come to a solution, is even better. So there's lots of trust. It's the way that I would like to think of RevOps working with us, chief sales officer, CRO, general manager, etc. Is it's almost like the trusted right hand. It's okay. I need this. Go get it. In the situations where it's been a little bit more dysfunctional, and I would say it's on occasion as opposed to a holistic part, is priority management, expectation management. RevOps can be quite a small team, usually speaking, and the ability to impact change is not always in our hands. We can do lots of things, we can manage lots of processes, we can make amendments to the CRM, we can develop new sales methodologies, we can develop reporting and tracking and KPIs, etc. But there's a limitation on how much we can actually impact what our teams do. And that's maybe where it becomes a bit more dysfunctional, is when there's a slight overreach. So I need you to go deal with some things with regards to the sales team. Okay, so I can bring in the forecasting, I can bring in different methodologies, I can bring in different whatever the company needs. It's when that then who's responsible for that? Because that's really the responsibility of the sales leader, the sales manager, sales director. And that's when it's a bit dysfunctional because it's almost an overreach as to what the expectation people have of RevOps.
Now, before we continue, a word from today's sponsor, Flourish. Most businesses don't underperform because they can't hire or don't invest in training. They underperform because the two things never talk to each other. Hiring happens over here, development happens over there, and somewhere in the middle, invariably performance breaks down. Flourish fixes that. They're an award-winning go-to-market talent partner working across early career SDR hiring, senior sales talent, and practical training that drives real, measurable results and not just activity. I've personally worked with their managing director, Sarah Skelton, for almost 20 years, so I know how they operate. They stay invested through the full journey and not just the placement. If you're looking to build a commercial team that actually performs, Flourish is where I would start. Find them at helloflourish.com. In sales, in life. You talked there about it's a relatively small team and trust between the leadership team and the RevOps leader. I 100% agree. And when you hire for that particular role, I think that's probably one of the first boxes you need to tick. Can I trust this person to deliver on what they say they can deliver? And can I trust them to push back on that overreach, on that, you're asking us to do this. This is not what we do. On this occasion, I'll help you here, but this is not what we're set up to do. And this isn't how we can't scale if we're doing too much, wearing too many hats of things that are not under the purview. So I completely get that. So if you look at that small team dynamic, getting the right people within that team is going to be crucial and critical. What, therefore, is the hiring profile that you're looking for? And obviously, RevOps has got lots of different functions within the overall function, but what's the profile rather than skill set? What's the profile of the people that you want to bring into a RevOps function?
Great question. So from my perspective, when it comes to hiring, I'm really looking for somebody who have to have some degree of technical skill. It's not the most important part because tech skills can always be learned. There's always ways to do it. So it's attitude and aptitude are the most important parts. So ideally, RevOps will always be spinning plates, juggling hats, etc., whatever it is. So it's having the right attitude to go, okay, I know it's not perfect. I understand there will be times when maybe it's a little bit more stressful, but it's always approaching it in that way, which is yes, you have to have the right attitude. Aptitude is also a key driver, but you don't really know that until someone is in place. So aptitude is when you're coaching somebody and you're mentoring them, that they pick it up and they're able to run with it almost semi-independently, not right from the start, but they get there. So attitude is always the thing I hire for, somebody who displays the right attitude and the right component. And aptitude is the thing that you focus on in the first 1 month, two 2 months, etc. Can that person, are they picking up what we're discussing? Are they understanding the business? Are they showing that they're able to link the pieces together as well? And those are the ways that I look for when I hire.
Interesting. So I term the RevOps function and the people within there, like other supporting functions, and I'll touch on those in a second, are the unsung heroes within a GTM organization because they don't get the the love and respect of everybody within there. They can,
Mhm.
from time to time, be the dumping ground of people's problems. And here's my monkey, I'm going to take it off my back. Let's go give that to RevOps. They can figure it out for us. And therefore, that attitude and aptitude is critical to get right. If we look at the skill sets then for that particular hire, do you need or experiences, do you need to bring people in that have worn the t-shirt from a RevOps perspective, or can you look elsewhere within the business and create your own, breed your own RevOps team? Or does there have to be, no, you need to have done this because the way that we work here is XYZ?
Personally speaking, I like if I have the opportunity to bring someone from internally as opposed to externally, I would prefer to bring somebody from internally. And the reason being that that person has already an idea of the culture and of the business behaviors and of the things. It wouldn't be from any team within the business. So I brought in people from customer success. I brought in people from who were account managers. I brought in people who were in the BI team. I think people who understand the business will always be able to help you. But again, it comes back to that part of you've worked with them, you know what they're capable of, and they show an attitude for RevOps looks like something I can do, I can learn from, I can develop, I can become better. So I think those are the ways that I would look at it. So preferably somebody internally, but if I am going externally, I would look more for somebody with at least a little bit of experience in the RevOps space.
Makes
Doesn't
sense.
mean that they had to do end to end, but they would have to have a solid underpinning of one of the main disciplines. So yeah,
Makes sense. So I alluded to the fact that the function of RevOps has a lot of sub functions, if you like, or subcategories, and you might have a better terminology for it. In fact, I'm sure you do. But what are the most important parts of those subcategories to get right in that scaling phase for an organization? Because you've got your sales ops, you've got customer ops, you might have somebody from a marketing ops perspective. So,
Mhm.
but and maybe I'm leading the witness a little bit too much here, but what's that one function within the function that actually helps move the needle significantly within a scaling organization?
I would say the technical component is usually one of the most. So if you break RevOps into the different parts, so you have to have the people skills, you have to be able to talk to people, understand people, develop things. You don't necessarily need to understand forecasting, etc., etc. But if you have good tech skills, that's usually where you start to get some wins. And I don't mean that you have to be a systems admin. I mean, even if it's exporting data and then turning it into a pivot table and being able to develop it, and you can deliver a narrative without having to explain what that narrative is. Now, it's a little bit different because now people will just export things, put it into Chat GPT, and it will do the work. So that's a great thing in so many ways. However, you need that because you need to develop that within RevOps to actually be able to understand this is the KPI that this team should focus on, and it shows a trend. You should be able to understand the data without necessarily having to put it into ChatGPT for it to give you this is what ChatGPT is telling me that you should focus on. So I'm kind of biased in this way. I think you
Yeah.
already know.
The closing tradition that we have here is we do a rapid fire 5 questions at the end of every episode. But before we get to that, is there anything from a RevOps perspective that you wish I would have asked today that our audience would get a keen insight that I didn't ask the question on?
There's always a question that I get, and I think you may have even asked me this question in the past, which is how do you judge if RevOps is successful? And it's a really difficult question to answer because we don't necessarily have specific KPIs. We don't necessarily have specific things that we control, so responsibility and accountability, it's really difficult to then, when people are having conversations, whether it's fractional or to hire, etc., where they ask, well, how will I judge if RevOps has been a success in our business or not? It's really hard to give a really tangible answer to it because we don't really have metrics in the same way. And I think it's one of those things where I think a lot of companies maybe view RevOps in the same way that they view a sales role. You have a quota, you have a target, you have to do this, you have to have this, and we'll judge you based around that. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to RevOps. We're not a cost leader as such, but we focus on a spectrum that is really, really difficult to nail down to. We know we've been a success because this metric has been improved, or this has happened, or this has happened. And I think that's one of the key things that as a narrative, I think for anybody who is thinking about hiring someone in RevOps or looking for someone to come in and do some fractional stuff, it's not a good question, and it's a really difficult one, and it makes the conversation go a little bit. Well, it's tough. We're here as a mechanism. We're not necessarily the tool itself. We're here as the toolbox. So when you're fixing a car, nobody thinks about the toolbox as having a specific function in fixing the car. But you wouldn't have your tools without the toolbox. You wouldn't have everything structured in the correct way. And I think that's the way to kind of break the mentality. Are are you a spanner or are you a hammer? No, we're the toolbox. You bring the spanner and the hammer. We're here to do it all, not specifically one micro function within the business.
Wow, that's a really insightful perspective, and one that probably warrants another conversation in the future where we can dig into what maybe we add this to our rapid fire questions in the future. What tool are you? Thanks for sharing. And you're right, it's very difficult to judge, and we every function gets their OKRs and we're measured against those OKRs, but they're very much internally focused rather than what is actually shifting the needle. So when we hire somebody within the sales organization, it's a very defined pipeline and closing business is the two primary objectives. Then you might have some leading indicators around activity and how do they present within a QBR and all these different things that you can see is tangible.
Mhm,
It's really difficult from a RevOps perspective. There are activities, and you look at maybe a list of projects that you might have,
mhm,
and some of those are getting ticked off, and they're getting ticked off a little bit quicker, and they're being successful implementations of different solutions. But again, that's a simple objective or a series of objectives within a project rather than we've shifted the business forward by 20%. It's all of the things that you do helps to move the business forward rather than this component and that component. So it's a really interesting thing to stew on for the audience today to think about. We do need RevOps, and this probably goes back to why businesses hire RevOps way too late because they're trying to justify the investment all of the time of good scaling business. We're at 10 million or even 5 million. And we do need a RevOps function of sorts, but I don't know how to measure it. How do we know that the investment is working? We're going to invest all of this money over here for what? I think we did talk about this previously, but how do you overcome that narrative? We've got somebody on the other side of the desk like me who's saying, we do need it. I know intrinsically, intellectually, we need this function, but I'm getting pressure from the CFO to maybe wait and we'll put it into next year's budget cycle rather than now.
mhm.
How do we overcome that?
What's the cost of doing nothing?
There you
What
go.
will you not achieve because you're not doing this? That's, I think, the simple answer, which is obviously a very important sales question as well, which is what is the cost of doing nothing? Well, if the cost of doing nothing is we won't have this initiative, or we won't have this project, or we won't have a forecasting methodology, or we won't have a lead qualification methodology, or we're not bringing in this tech, or win rates are going down and we don't have time to invest to understand how to plateau and then go back up again, etc. If you can answer questions, that's when you should be looking at RevOps. So if things are even if things are going well and you can't answer the question, why are things going well? That's usually an indicator that you need somebody to come in the RevOps space and look at it holistically and say. And RevOps are not always hired just for companies who are doing well or doing bad. It really depends on. I think the bigger part for RevOps going into a company now is a sales leader, whether it's a VP, CRO, CSO, etc., who has worked with RevOps in the past, and they see the value, and
Yeah,
they understand that the way I can grow this organization, the way that it should be done, requires this person who's in the background. They're not constantly focused on their specific output. They're focused on let's make it more efficient. Let's improve it. And I forgot to answer this at the start. One of the main purposes of RevOps is to make everybody in the go-to-market org's life easier, to make it better, to improve it, because we're there to look at it holistically and say, yeah, we can fix this, we can do this, and maybe it has half a percentage point on our win rate at the end of the day, or your qualified ops go up to a higher standard, but there's less qualified ops. Our job is to come in and make everybody in the go-to-market org better and happier, ideally, but it's not always easy, but we try.
excellent. Thank you for that. So let's get into the rapid fire, the quick questions that we give everybody at the end of every episode. So, question number one is: what's that one tool within your GTM stack that you cannot live without?
Easy, always going to answer the same question. A good CRM, regardless of AI or any additional tech extensions, technologies, etc. If you do not have a CRM and you're running your sales org in Google Sheets or Excel, good luck. You really, really need a decent, configured, and operational CRM in place. That's always, but I come from a RevOps space, so that's my definition.
Very good. The biggest GTM myth you would like to kill off?
Ooh, this is a good one. Mid-pick is not a sales methodology. It irks me. It irks me within my bones. Mid-pick is a qualification criteria, but people try and embed it more and more as a sales methodology, like consultative sales or value-based selling, etc. And it's a data point. It's a qualification, and I think that's the thing I would like to kill off. I know lots of people who I've worked with and who are senior sales leaders think exactly the same, which is med
Excellent.
pick is great, but it's not a methodology.
What's the one metric you look at first thing on a Monday morning?
Forecasting, forecast position, always. It's the key to the business. It's the key to all the conversations that you're going to have the rest of the week. Where are we versus target? It's always the same.
Very good. And question four, behind me, you can see I've got a stack of different books. So what I
Mhm.
ask here is, what's the one GTM book or self-help book that you go back to time and time again?
You'll recognize this book, I think. I think you gave it to me. So start with The Why by Simon Sinek. It's an amazing book. And I think everybody, whether you're BDR, you're RevOps, sales ops, read that book. It's really, really helpful.
Awesome. And finally, who is the most underrated person in your professional network that more people should really know about?
I will give you two because I think it's only fair. So Carlos, who is a RevOps manager at Localize, who I worked with, Carlos is amazing. When you talk about attitude and aptitude, he has it all. So Carlos, 100%. And the other one is my RevOps companion just now, Shopware. His name is Andy Urban. Again, the same idea. Just you have a conversation and he's away. He's already working on it, and you never have to think about it. It's so much fun to work with those two people, especially. And both of them approach life in such a friendly, calm, happy way. It makes such a difference to work with people who just smile. And yeah, let's just do it. Let's go. I love that.
No, very
So
good.
both of
Yeah.
those guys.
And I don't know if you were at Localize for the offsite in Marbella. Carl has also got an outstanding singing voice.
Really?
So yes,
Wow.
he does. So great suggestions. We'll tag those guys into the episode so they can see the shout out from yourself. On behalf of myself, thank you so much today for taking the time to share your experiences around RevOps, a unique position coming at it from a finance perspective into RevOps. But having worked with you for a period of time, you are exactly what a sales leader needs from a RevOps person. It is a RevOps leader. It is you do what you say what you mean, you don't BS, you called me out on stuff, you helped guide me, and you helped guide the business as a result of that. So thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time out of your vacation to spend it with myself and the audience today.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Your buyers are still sitting in that outside seat. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple or Spotify, drop a like and a follow. It genuinely means the world as we keep growing this channel. And if today's conversation sparked a question or a thought, leave it in the comments. Every month I answer your questions in a dedicated episode, and the best ones might just end up on Instagram, LinkedIn or TikTok. Your question could be the next conversation that we have. This episode was brought to you by Flourish. Find them at helloflourish.com. We'll see you next time with a brand new guest in the outside seat.